first time I got caught drinking and was going to get in trouble for it, I left my phone like playing music or something like that, and I got a text, and my mom checked it because it was playing music for like outside of the pool where my friends and I were, and because people were still coming over, and so she checked it and she came out and she was like, "Taylor, get up here!" And I was like, "Oh, something's awry," and so I went up there and was like, "What's up?" And she's like, "You want to explain this to me?" And my friend had texted me like, "I'm on the way. I didn't forget to bring shot glasses this time, haha," or whatever. And I was like, "I don't know. You know, we were only going to drink a little bit." And she's like, "You tell all of your friends to go home right now." And so I had to tell my friends to go and like just sit in my room for a while and wait. And then my parents, my dad got home. They were going to give me a little talk. And it was like, they got home and they said, "We're going to talk to you about this tomorrow. We're going to talk about, you know, to ourselves, you know, a little parental communal meeting over this. And then we'll talk to you about it tomorrow." And I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'll just sweat this out and hope I'm not in too much trouble. I'll be going to college in like a year, I guess. So it's not too bad. They can't really get me." The next day, some things were, you know, came to understanding between my parents. And it became clear that they were going to, they came down and they were going to talk to me about it. But the news they gave me instead was, "We're getting a divorce."
Well, you were out of the hot seat.
And so I didn't get in a lick of trouble. I was like, "Well, I'm going to my friend's house then." And they were like yeah, I should have just, I was like, "Well, now I need some booze." You know, it wasn't like this had been a long time coming. It wasn't like a huge shock, but it was almost like a macabre feeling of like, man, that kind of sucks, but somebody is going to get to do whatever they want until college, you know?
In the words of my friend who stole all of the lizards and frogs from the science class my sophomore year, it is better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission.
What did he do with them?
He didn't do anything with them. This guy just had a bunch of lizards and frogs that he would like explain things about. Like, we're learning about amphibians. This guy right here, this is a green toad, Southern Missouri, whatever the fuck. And be like, "Oh, cool." And for no reason, he just stole them and let them go. He just right outside the school, there's a little like patch of trees, and he just like, "What are you gonna do with those?" "I just thought I'd let him go put the thing back, see what he says tomorrow." So it's like, just released all of his animals.
Well, were they his private animals or like school animals?
They were just there every day, so I don't know. Like,
okay, but it wasn't like he brought them in from home one day.
Probably a little bit of both. You know,
it could have been a mismatch. There was a couple frogs, and then like they didn't look like rare lizards, just like under a heat lamp sitting there.
Maybe the school probably paid for the animals, but you know, your teacher is the one who feeds them, takes care of them, technically owns them.
Well, not anymore.
Speaking of, I know Woody has asked before, like, "Hey guys, go rate the podcast on iTunes because it helps us out and it helps the show and everything." And that's definitely true. A couple of days ago, someone I work with who is like probably early 60s or something was like something came up and they're like, "Oh, and you do your podcast," like at the end of a meeting kind of thing. And they were like, "Can you do that podcast thing?" I was like, yeah, I do the podcast. I've done it for so long. And they do the thing that I dread in my professional life, which is pull their phone out and go, "Help me find it." And I'm like, all right, go to iTunes and enter in Painkiller already, you know, because I don't want to show them the YouTube version.
Painkiller, like an aspirin.
Yeah, like I and so he took it out and he searched it up and he found Painkiller already on iTunes, and apparently there are a few new reviews that people have left there, and one of them says, and he was reading it out loud. He's like, "I'm so thankful to Woody and Kyle that despite Taylor's developmental disorders, they're willing to employ him on the show." He's reading this. There's still other people in the room who I work with. Not like every day, but people I have connections. I email every so often, like that kind of thing. And he's like, why are they saying that? Like, you're on the show with them, right? And I'm like, yeah, it was a meme cropped up that I'm mentally retarded. And so that explains that. And I was expecting him to like not get it entirely. He busted a gut about the prospect of a bunch of people on the internet saying that I was mentally retarded and writing it into iTunes reviews. So thanks, guys. Thanks for that. More reviews like that needed. Pump up our iTunes rating. It always helps.
Christ.
So thanks, fellas. That could have gone one of two ways, and it went the good way. So.
Oh, the other, I forgot about this. This is popping back in my head. The other day, I was driving home from somewhere trying to get home. And I was in traffic. And you know how if you're in a big line of traffic and there's someone trying to exit and take a left into that turn lane, you'll like kind of be courteous and you'll create a gap between the car in front of you and where you stop so that you allow them to turn left and get through so they're not stuck. So there was this truck trying to get out. And so I stopped and was going to try and let him through. And it was at that moment that I noticed this man in the F-150 is missing both of his arms past the elbow, both of them. Like one arm has like a little chicken wing kind of hook at the end of it.
Mhm.
And the other one's got nothing. It's a man in there, no arms, no arms. And he's going to turn by my car.
He needs a Tesla.
And as soon as I see him like leaning forward to do the no arm turn like this, like doing stuff like that, like I can't not look. And he saw me looking, but I still wanted to look because I wanted to see how he was going to make the turn. And he made the turn expertly, like almost as though he's used to not having arms. You know, silly me. Like in that situation, I'm thinking like, has he done this before? Like so clearly he has. He turned into the place. But that guy surprised me. Goes to show you don't even need arm to drive better than a woman.
Jesus Christ.
Have I told you guys about when I worked at Ben & Jerry's for one day?
No.
I want to hear more.
Okay, so I was 16. I had just gotten my license, and it was summer, and my dad was like, you got to get a job. You're not going to sit around and be a piece of shit all summer. You got to go get a job. And so I just went around, applied everywhere I could find, eventually found a Ben & Jerry's that was near my house. And I was like, okay, this will be cool. I'll just serve people ice cream, whatever.
So
And
is this
I
a
went in-
storefront or like a factory job?
Oh, no, this was like the person who scoops your ice, like the front end person who's asking what kind of ice cream do you want. So it was
Okay.
that kind of position, just the scooper. And I went in there. I was going to fill out the job application, and an older woman who looked like a fucking hippie behind the counter was like, oh, you applying for a job? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, you seem like a really good guy. You seem like a good guy. Come on back. We'll talk about it. And I was like, all right. Didn't even have to fill this one out. And so walked back the same day. Just as that was happening, she was like, okay, well, just stick around for a while. You seem like a good fit here. You seem like a good fit. We'll have you stick around. How about you start making some waffle cones? So, like, 20 minutes after I walked into this fucking Ben & Jerry's, I was making waffle cones, and, like, I thought I had a job. And so I talked to my dad on the phone and was like, all right, Dad, I got a job at Ben & Jerry's. You know, I finally found one. Good for me. And I just kept making waffle cones for the next 6 hours at this place. They had me make waffle cones for like 6 hours. Like I worked a full shift at this fucking Ben & Jerry's. I thought I was employed. And then near the end of this situation, I was leaving and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll call you about it. Definitely. And I was like, whoa, I just made waffle cones for 6 hours here. Like I just served people. I did everything I need to do for this job. And you're telling me you'll call me about it? And they were like, yeah, we'll call you about it. Okay, we'll let you know. You know, you're definitely going to get it, though. You're definitely going to get it. As if it's some big deal. Scooping ice cream like you're going to make the cut. And so I went home, and I got the lady's number individually, and I called her back the next day. And I called her the day after. And I called her the day after. And eventually I drove back to that location because the theater was right near there, and I was going with some friends, so I figured I'd stop in and talk to this lady and ask, why the fuck haven't I been paid for the 6 hours of work I did for free making waffle cones for you? And why haven't you called me back telling me I have a job? And I pull near the Ben & Jerry's, and they're closed. They went out of business the day that they offered me a job.
I think you suck
And
at
eventually
making
when
waffle
she did-
cones.
Yeah, when she did call me back, it wasn't even like oh, we're sorry we misled you. It was like oh yeah, you know, sometimes it doesn't go the way you want. And I was like, what? That's not an answer. This isn't
That's awful.
anything.
What a cunt.
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. Worked for 6 hours for free, didn't get any ice cream, and didn't get a job that summer. So
You didn't get any ice cream either.
no. They even the gentleman who alongside of her was teaching me how to make the waffle cones because it's so difficult, told me that I would get a free pint of ice cream per day. Per day, yes. And I got none.
They owe you a pint of. If anyone out there from Ben and Jerry's is listening, you owe Taylor a pint of fucking ice cream with interest. I don't know how you do that. Maybe that's a quart
It's a
now.
gallon
6
now.
pints.
All right, so you owe him 6 fucking pints of ice cream and at least $35 for his time. I don't know what minimum wage was 6 or 7 years ago, but you owe him at least that because you apparently employed our friend as slave labor at Ben and Jerry's.
I was taken like a fool. I thought, like, sitting there making those ice cream cones, I can remember being like, man, this lady is so cool. Like, I'm getting a job. And then nothing happened. I got a really good one. When I, like, 5 years ago, was walking through a grocery store, and this elderly woman was offering bagel bites. And she had just finished one batch, was turning around to get the next sleeve out, and I took all of them. And I left. Didn't buy any bagel bites, but I took like 9.
You had 9.
So I didn't stick around, but I could just picture her turning around like, oh, someone wants to try my bagel bites, and then, oh Jesus, like, where have they gone? Where's that nice young man? But
You gotta get some sun, man. It's good for you.
I should.
Yeah.
Ever since I took Accutane, are you familiar with that?
No.
It's a drug that they used to just hand out like candy in the early 2000s, which would like obliterate any acne that you had and like clear your skin up. And so I got on that, and one of the I hit every checklist of potential side effects for that thing, where it's like, oh, it might make your skin more pale, like permanently. It did that to me. You might burn easier. It did that to me. You might get chronic nosebleeds from the dryness. That happened to me for like 3 years as I was taking it. I'd just be like sitting around, like, and then just.
Did you get the liver damage?
You took it for a long time.
I took it or I didn't take it for that long. I meant like the time following. I think it was like an 8-month cycle or something they put you on.
That's crazy.
One thing, but it made it so easy to make your nose bleed. I remember once I was sitting in, I guess it was freshman year math, and I was not ready for the test. I had fucked around in class. I hated math. And so like, it was one course that like, if I was going to be bummy in a course, I would be bummy in math because I just didn't like it. And I got there for the test and was like, you know what? I'll probably be good enough at this to get a B. I'd be fine with a B. And I sit down to take it, and within like 5 minutes, I realize, oh no, Taylor, you're staring down the barrel of like an F, and not a 58% F, a 31% F. And so I sat there at my desk, and I went like this on the side of my nose, and just pushed on it, and like moved it around, and did stuff like that until my nose started bleeding. And I got up and was like, oh, Mrs. Johnson, I gotta go. There's blood on my paper. You can see, and I left and just took refuge in the bathroom for as long as I thought would be excusable for her to give me another day to take it. I come back with like 12 minutes left in class, sit down like I'm going to like start working, and I just take it over to her, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I can't right now. There's no way I'm going to be able to finish this. She let me come back, take it a couple days later because of my nosebleed shenanigans. Still got a C.
So proud.
So proud.
Well, that's how you know you were definitely going to get an F if after a couple of days of like studying hard and having looked at the test.
Yes.
No, she gave me a new test.
It was maybe an indicator, though. Can you guys hear the sirens?
No.
I can't hear you.
No, I'm sure the viewers can. I don't know. I'm just like, fucking fire department. Jesus, get there. Turn your shit off. I don't know what you're honking your horn for and running your sirens. I think they just like playing firemen at some point.
Police sirens go off 3 times an episode
Really?
for me, and I just mute it every time.
Another hammering.
Another hammering. Another murder.
So, how rough is the neighborhood out there, Taylor? The inside of your place looks nice.
Oh, it is nice. Like it, and it's not even that like where I live is. I mean, I live technically in the city, but it's more just like a safe area of St. Louis is like a very, very dangerous part of like Seattle or Portland or Kansas City or Raleigh or something like, but comparatively,
Or any American city, really.
or most, every time they make
Or
like a new-
Baghdad.
I'm so tired of like how St. Louis is only ever in the news for bad things. Like I saw another like
We have a
NPR
wonderful parking lot by the
poll.
library.
Yeah,
Have you seen the art?
Don't go to the library late at night. You know?
Why don't they run stories on our parking lot?
But like they showed something the other day where it was like these like graphs of the most dangerous cities by continent, and I was like, please just for once don't have us on this list. And it was like USA, fucking St. Louis, right at the top. It's like God
You're
damn it.
number one? Because I mean, I would have
Yeah,
thought Chicago or
only-
L.A. or maybe New York.
Well, Chicago's so much bigger.
The per capita is not as bad.
Well, the way they gauge it all obviously is per capita, and per capita, St. Louis is the only American city that's in kind of like the realm of Honduras average, and that's not a group you want to be a part of.
So you live in a
Honduras.
shithole city.
Oh, it's an incredibly dangerous city.
I'm just going off
Like
Trump's
people
definition,
will come
right?
in from out of town rather, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to a Cardinals game. I'm going to a Blues game or whatever." It's until 2 years ago, I'm going to a Rams game, and I'm like, "Hey, that game ends at like 11 p.m. Be careful. Park somewhere that's really populated so that you'll be walking back in a big crowd." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I bet. Trust me, I walk downtown in Portland all the time." And it's like, "I bet you do, retard. You're in for a hammering if you don't walk back the right way." Like,
Is it that
No,
bad? Because I feel like I'm an idiot from Portland in this scenario. Every time I hear about these like terrible parts of town or whatever, I look around and I think, it's not that bad.
I went to a restaurant 3 weeks ago. There's a restaurant here called Bar Louie. There's a bunch of them, or a handful of them. And I went to one of its more popular locations, like I guess it was like 5 weeks ago now. And I was there with someone, and she and I were sitting, and she wasn't from the city area. She was from further out west where it's safer. And we were sitting, having a beer, eating, and it was 8:45 at night, not super late. And out of nowhere, a giant group of hoodlums to the right who were eating next to us start sprinting out of this restaurant right onto the street. Like, it's a city area, so there's just a street and a bunch of cars parked and shit, and they run out there. And I was looking around, like, through the window of the restaurant, looking out towards them, like, what the hell are these guys running out there for? I look out there, and there is a big fat white bitch and a short black guy in a fist fight. And I go, oh, it's good that all these fellas are running out there. They must be trying to settle it down. No, they made a circle around the brawlers in order to make sure that neither of them could escape and that they had to keep fighting. And so they kept fighting out there. This fat white bitch, God, she took some Lozon-esque punches and kept coming back for more. This black guy decked her in the face to the point that everybody else in the restaurant was like, oh, shit, man. Oh, he ain't going to hit her again like that.
Did she outweigh him? Is this a big white fat chick versus like a Cat Williams type dude?
They were both probably like 5'6"-ish. She was fat. He was not. He was like skinny, but like a little bit of muscle on him. This dude, well, to be fair, she was antagonizing just as much as him. But this dude punched her in the face, knocked her onto the ground. This lady in the restaurant with me goes, call the police! Call the police! He beat her up! And so people are calling the police, trying to get the police to show up. And
Are
this
you on a
continues for about
first
20
date in
minutes.
this scenario?
No, it was someone that I was fucking, and we wanted to get food afterward.
Okay.
And she goes down, stands back up like almost right away, which is remarkable. The dude's like hoodlum friends pull up in some ratty ass Chevy Blazer, but instead of him running over and getting in it right away, they continue to fight. She had both of her legs scraped to fuck, her pantyhose or whatever torn to shreds. She went over to him one final time after a few punches had been thrown, and this was, keep in mind, this occurred over the course of like 25 minutes. After like the first 10 minutes, it was like the police probably aren't coming. Like they got other shit to do. And so like he was about to go get in his car with the Chevy Blazer. He gets 1 foot in there, and she comes over and she's still doing her I fuck you, you hit like a bitch or whatever. And I'm enjoying watching because it's entertaining. And he comes over, takes his foot out of the car, walks over. They're between two cars, you know, like parked at the parking meters. They're right between two cars in that very small area. This dude gives like that sucker punch pop where he hits her so fucking hard in the jaw, she goes down, hits her head off the side of this parked Corolla or whatever the fuck, and then is just laying there on the ground, popped up again in like another minute. Good for her. She was like Pam from Archer. Like, just could take a beat. and the dude gets in his car. They start to drive away, and they're like flashing a bunch of gang signs and shit. And then like 10 minutes after all of this,
victory.
yeah, yeah, I beat that white
Took that
bitch up.
bitches.
Yeah, and then like 10 minutes later, I was like, you know what? I don't think the police are coming, and they didn't. They just never showed up. Bitch got the shit kicked out of her right in front of this restaurant, 8:45 p.m. in a large metropolitan area. Police never showed up because they're dealing with the Hammer murderer or some shit. Like they don't have time.
I knew a cop, and he said that as you get wiser and you're a veteran, you show up to fight slower and slower. And
Makes sense.
I was unimpressed with his attitude towards this thing. Right? There's someone that really might need his help, but he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, it makes sense from the perspective of keeping him safe, but it's totally piece of shit when it's like, you know, you're not a librarian, right? You know, you're a cop. It's your job to rush there and help people.
But come on, guys, you've never done anything where when you look back at it, you're like, I could have gotten my ass kicked and I shouldn't have done that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I was in college, I was wasted outside of a bar once, and a friend of mine, it was wintertime, and so nobody was taking cover for this bar outside. And I was so drunk, a buddy of mine convinced me. He's like, hey, nobody's standing out there. I bet you could go out there and pretend to be a bouncer and collect cover out in front of this bar. And I was like, yeah, I bet I could. And they're like, no, really, go try it. I'm like, oh, I'll do it. So I went out there, and for like a few people, I was like, oh, whoa, ID. All right, $5. And then they give me $5. And then, no. ID? Like, pretend, you know.
This has a holographic key. This is bullshit. It's $10.
Yeah. And after a little bit of time and a little bit of money, I was like, this is stupid. I should probably go back inside and stop defrauding people.
Oh, I just had another one of those cringy, like, your shitty memory thing having to do with an old folks home. When I was like 7, I was with my mom at my great-grandpa's old folks home, and I was walking around the whole place all day. Man, looking back, those poor old people, they're all dead now, guaranteed. That was 20 years ago. But I walked around all day with my shirt like this over my nose and my mouth, looking around like I'd be like, oh, hey, Grandpa. And like at the time, I was just a kid, so I was like, God, it smells fucking weird in here. And so I was just covering my nose. And my mom had to keep telling me, like, Taylor, that's incredibly rude. Stop. And it's like, oh yeah, you can smell it. You die too. Like no, I covered it up.
That's like when a man with a turban was standing behind my dad in line, and my sister like pulled his sweater, and she was like, "Look, Dad, a genie." She's like 6 years old, so it's like, but my dad just like, shut the fuck up.
When I was 5, or no, I guess maybe even younger, like 4, I was at a daycare, and my mom dropped me off and whatnot, and I was playing with all the other little kids. And when she came back to get me, she was like, "Did you have fun, Taylor?" We're walking out to the car. I was like, no, I don't want to leave. I want to go back in there and play with those little brown bears. And she's like, what? Those little brown bears? And I'm like, yeah, those little brown bears right over there. And it was just 4 little black kids that I'd been playing with. And I thought
you're
going to
burn in hell, you
bears.
piece of shit.
Oh, I also, when I thought that the word lumpy meant ugly, and so I loudly shouted at a deformed man when I was 6 at a grocery store that he was a lumpy man, and my mom had to tell me, Taylor, we're leaving. I didn't get well. I caused some problems for my mom. I was a leash kid. I got put on a leash in malls. Were any of you leash kids? You were, Harley?
No.
Did you have
I was
a full
leash
body
kid.
leash, or did you have
I was a
wrist
leash kid. Yeah, wrist leash, and I actually was notorious for breaking off the leash.
Me and you there. Yeah, the wrist leash the wrist leash was a one and done thing because it takes no effort at all for a little child to wriggle out of a wrist leash. It was when I went to the Black House White Market or fucking Nordstrom or whatever with a whole vest like I was going skydiving. You know, it was like being a dog where I just start running and just oof, just get pulled back. they had to close a Macy's once because they had to keep a Macy's open because I was so dedicated to my hide and seek game of being inside one of those circular closed things.
Oh, those were the best, man.
Yeah, I love
really
hiding.
get serious thinking done in those things.
You could you could get a lot done in those
I
things.
wonder how Taylor would have fared under my mom. Like, I don't think you'd have been a runner. That you beat it. Like, she'd beat the hell out of someone for
Yeah,
that.
for
Like,
those
we
of you who
didn't
don't know,
run.
Woody took some licks as a kid.
Oh man, yeah. I just like the thought of trying to get away from my mom in a mall scenario or something. Like the consequences were too high. You wouldn't
was
want
risky.
that.
I did something once where I must have been 7. My brother was probably 5. You know those wagons, like those play school wagons that you pull that like you see moms walking down the street and there's 2 kids in there. I took one of those and we had an enormous hill in my backyard when I was growing up and a giant willow tree popped right in the middle of it. But it was the only tree there and the woods were hundreds of yards back. And so I told my brother we were gonna have a fun ride down the thing. What I didn't tell him is that I would not be joining him and I was gonna tape him up so he couldn't get out. So I taped him. I taped his arms together. And, you know, the only thing you have to do as the older brother, like, because, like, obviously, if he resisted, even like 5 years and 7 years old, he would have escaped. All you have to do as the older brother is be like, yeah, it's going to be so much fun. Yeah, it's going to be great. Can you believe it? Yeah, we're going to have a good time. And then he was all taped up. And I remember standing there with my hand on this wagon, ready to push him down the hill to see what would happen, like on this fucking play school thing.
Oh.
And I hear my dad from the balcony behind me, Taylor, do not let go of that wagon. And I was like, and I hear immediately the telltale signs of an adult running quickly down the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. Like, all right, it is now or never. And so I let go of it. And
I did not know where this is going.
Yeah, and immediately it starts careening down this hill. Boom, 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 boom. Like my brother's bouncing up and down. And I hadn't aimed him that well. I was like, he's just gonna go straight into the middle of the fucking yard. What could possibly go wrong? He'll slow to a stop and be fine. I'm not gonna get spanked. No, I just let go of it, and he goes straight into that willow tree as
he hit it
20 miles an hour. Not 20. It was fucking quick, and he obviously not strapped in. Hits the tree.
Whoa,
you know, bloodies his forehead. No, I taped him up. I didn't tape him into the wagon.
So he can't protect himself, basically.
Correct. Correct. It was hindsight's 20/20 on all this. I've had a lot of time to mature, but there was nothing more scary than seeing him hitting that tree and then turning around and being like, "Oh no, like that wasn't worth it."
Oh yeah,
and now he's
consequences.
here. And that was. I never taped anyone up and pushed them down a hill again. Will suffice it to say.